You're about to throw that food away because of two small words on the label. Best before. They look simple, harmless, even. But those two words ended up on your food because of a strange decision made decades ago. A decision most shoppers were never really meant to question. What you think you know about food expiration dates is only the surface. So let's uncover it fully on Simple History of Things for you. Most people assume best before dates are scientific, carefully calculated, backed by regulations, maybe even based on food safety research. And yes, some dates actually do matter for safety. But the phrase best before was never meant to tell you when food becomes dangerous. It was meant to tell you when the food is likely at its best quality. And those are two very different things. The system behind these labels is also surprisingly inconsistent. People in the food industry sometimes describe it as the Wild West of labeling. To see how that happened, we have to jump back to the 1930s. By then, packaged food was becoming common across the United States. But shoppers had no real way to tell how fresh anything was. Milk was a big concern. Around that time, a story began circulating in Chicago. According to one popular version, someone close to Al Capone got sick after drinking spoiled milk. Capone already had business interests in the dairy industry. He owned a processing company called Meadowmore Dairies. Soon after, he began pushing for milk bottles to carry visible dates so people would know how fresh the product was. In 1933, Chicago introduced a rule requiring milk bottles to display a date stamp. It became one of the earliest known cases of milk being labeled with a freshness date. An idea connected, somewhat surprisingly, to a gangster's dairy business. At first, that detail doesn't sound like a big deal, but it helped start something much larger. Meanwhile, in Britain, a retailer called Marks & Spencer tried something new. In the 1950s, they began adding date codes to products in their storerooms. Customers weren't supposed to see them. The dates were simply there so employees knew which items needed to be sold first. Basic stock rotation. For years, shoppers never noticed those internal labels. But that eventually changed. By around 1970, Marks & Spencer began putting date labels directly on shelves where customers could see them. For the first time, shoppers could easily spot a freshness date. And people liked that transparency. Around the same time, some consumer activists began decoding the secret manufacturer codes printed on packaged food. They printed pamphlets explaining what those hidden numbers meant and handed them out in supermarkets. Suddenly, shoppers were learning information that had never been explained to them before. Under growing pressure, food manufacturers and regulators started creating clearer labeling systems. In the late 1970s, regulators in Europe introduced rules requiring packaged food to carry what was called a minimum durability date. This policy came from the European Economic Community. The wording they chose was best before, not expires on, not unsafe after, just best before. In other words, the label was meant to signal quality, but many people naturally interpreted it as a safety warning. Now here's the part most shoppers don't realize. In the United States, there is still no single national standard for most food date labels. Manufacturers often choose their own wording. Best before, use by, sell by, best if used by. They sound similar, but they can mean different things. Most of them aren't federally regulated, with one major exception: infant formula. And this confusion has a real effect. A 2019 survey found that about 84% of Americans say they sometimes throw away food simply because the date on the package has passed. Not because the food smells bad. Not because it looks spoiled. Just because of the printed date. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, about 30 to 40% of the food supply in the United States ends up being wasted every year. And misunderstanding date labels is believed to play a role in that waste. When you really think about it, something interesting shows up here. A label originally meant to help manage quality and inventory slowly turned into a rule many people follow automatically. Most of us were never actually taught what those dates mean. We just learned to trust them. So the next time you open your fridge and see that date on a package, it's worth remembering what it actually represents. Usually, it's a quality guideline, not necessarily a safety deadline. Food that's past its best before date may not be at peak flavor anymore, but that doesn't automatically mean it's unsafe. And that small misunderstanding has shaped how millions of people treat the food in their kitchens. Everyday objects rarely have boring histories. They usually have forgotten ones. Thanks for exploring this one with us here on Simple History of Things for You. And if there's an everyday object, word, or habit you've always been curious about, drop it in the comments. Many of our episodes come directly from viewer suggestions. And if your idea becomes our next story, we'll give you a shout out right here on the channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more hidden stories behind the ordinary things around us.